Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Tuesday series on equipping NGOs in Andhra and Telangana. This is a joint collaboration with Justice and Hope that we are hosting 8 modules on different topics. Our intention is that we will be in further uh, able to equip community level workers and village volunteers in Andhra and Telangana. So, hope our ripples are more effective and long lasting and deep enough that we will. This is just not for our own analysis, but also all of us together are able to make a greater impact in the community where we are working. With this, I would like to introduce our today's speaker. We have Shilpa Barry and Sandeep Paul. Um,
Hi.
yeah. Shilpa, she heads an NGO called as Equip India. It's a project of St. Francis Trust in Hubli, Karnataka, as executive director. She has a bachelor degree in physiotherapy, a master degree in social work, and currently pursuing a PhD in social work. Wow. She and her husband are associated with non-profit sector since 14 years. That's so exciting to have you, Shilpa. And we
Thank
have
you.
Sandeep Paul. Sandeep Paul works as a project coordinator for the Differently Able in Justice and Hope. The initiative is called Unnati, which means advancement or empowerment. Sandeep completed his BCA, Bachelor in Computer Application, and is a freelance web designer and a sports enthusiast. He was affected by arthritis at the age of 8, but it hasn't hampered Sandeep from being a change maker. He finds ways to elevate the suffering of others, enjoys chatting on WhatsApp, video games, and being a motivational speaker whenever and wherever he's invited. So exciting to have both Shilpa and Sandeep for our training today. Sandeep, we are even more thrilled to have you represent from the community and see how we can empathize with the community and with people around us. Thank you so much once again, and over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So yeah, before I start the module, just like to let me start the power slide.
Are we also going to take a poll um, before we start?
Yeah, yeah, we can take a poll.
Okay. Friends, I'm going to launch the poll. You will notice a pop up on your screen. Please input your answers and accept the poll that will flash on your screen.
So these questions are all related to what I'm going to be speaking today, understanding the differently abled.
Yeah. May I request all the participants to participate in the poll?
It doesn't matter whether you know the right answer or not, because we'll
Yeah.
be doing this again after the session. So we hope you'll learn something today. Okay, so shall we end the polling? I hope all of you.
We have received just 5
Oh, okay. Okay. We'll wait
responses.
for some more time. There are only 6 questions.
Yeah.
It shouldn't take long. So don't worry, there's no wrong answer. We're not going to put marks for you.
இல்லை கரெக்டாக ஆக்கிடலாம்.
It's an anonymous poll, so we don't know who's giving what answers.
Okay, we received 12. I'm going to end the poll.
Okay. Okay, so these are the poll results. So we have 33 people saying hockey for the sports people in wheelchair can play. Then what job can a person with disability have? All of the above. Okay. What causes someone to have a disability? 92 have said all of the above. And how do you introduce yourself to a person with disability? 50% have said none of the above. Okay. And then fifth question, who can I contact in case I want to help a differently able person? Given 75 have given the most, all of the above. And the last question is the Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disability is under the Ministry of. So 83% have said social justice and empower. Okay, right. So let's view the answer after we finish the session. And I'll tell you which is the right answer for each of them. Okay, thank you. Okay, right. So let's jump in. Can you see my screen? Okay. Yeah, so before starting off with the module, let me just give you a brief background about Unnati. So Unnati is a project we have started at Justice and Hope to uplift the differently abled. Yeah, so this is a vision statement to build supportive, inclusive, and accessible communities for the differently abled persons and enable a life of dignity and purpose. So basically, we believe in supporting and empowering them, and we do that by enhancing work and employment prospects with the necessary education, training, and support they need. And we also provide access to information about their rights and welfare schemes available. And also, for the short term, we provide timely and appropriate aid. Further, we also try and educate communities to be supportive and inclusive without discrimination. Also, we endeavor to engage with the governing bodies to provide easy accessibility in public buildings and spaces. And also, just like now, we'll be supporting more disability awareness and engage the media to convey it in a positive manner. That's a brief summary of what we do at Unnati. And let's jump into our module for today. So, the module for today, we titled it as Understanding the Differently Abled. There will be three subtopics to it. The first one is disability, its prevalence, and our response. I'll be covering that part. And the other two will be covered by Shilpa, which will be government schemes and benefits and community inclusiveness. So let's go ahead with disability, its prevalence, and our response. So, what is disability? Disability is a complex category as it has been and still is understood and interpreted by different people in very different ways. So the UN had recently, some years back, had given some guidelines on how we can do it, and different organizations are given different definitions. We look at it a little further down the road, and before that, I like to ask all of you a quick question. So some people may feel uneasy being around a person with disabilities. How does it make you feel? I would like you all to answer this question. Please give your answer in the chat box. How does it make you feel to be around a person with disabilities? Anybody? Okay, Chrysolite says she becomes very curious and also feels sympathetic. And there's a need to overcome that though, yes. Anybody else? What do you feel? Shilpa says blessed. Okay. So, answer. Anybody else? What do you feel? I'm sure all of us have at some point in time met somebody who has, okay, somebody has said they feel that they are very courageous. Okay, okay, and Sri Rama has said makes them challenging. Okay, specially gifted. All right. Okay, all right. So those are the answers we got. So let us look. They can do more than ordinary. Oh, yes. Let's go ahead. Okay, so before we head into the question of what is disability or what is being differently abled, I would like to tell you a few things that will be relevant for you to know. Differently abled people are people too. That's the first thing I'd like you to remember, that disability does not define who a person is. As a matter of fact, I think that all of us have some kind of disability in our lives. Some of it is visible outside, and some of it is not visible. So, differently, people have a great potential to accomplish many things just like anyone else. And they should not be defined and we should not be defined by our disability, but I think we should be defined by the same way that anybody else is defined by our character, our intelligence, and we also have our own goals and dreams. We are no different from anyone else. And the issue is with people who are on the other side. As a lack of understanding in our society as a whole. People with disabilities are simply people and need to be treated as such. And be wary of implying that people with disabilities deserve to be pitied, feared, or ignored, or that they are somehow more heroic, courageous, patient, or special than others who do not have a disability. So I find that there's a huge, there's a spectrum. Like on one corner, we see that we have a very negative reaction, and on the other side, we elevate them to be somebody that they are not. So one of few examples, we see them as objects of burden, or we see ourselves, or we are seen as objects of burden or charity. People with disabilities are seen as helpless or as someone who needs our help. Well, that might be true to an extent, but largely we try to do things on our own. And objects of dread. People with disabilities make us anxious and uncomfortable. Sometimes we are also ridiculed. We sometimes take it as a humorous thing. We laugh about it and we make fun of the way they move or the way they talk. And in some places, they are also thought of as somebody not human or subhuman, like a vegetable or an animal. And in some places, they are seen as they have a sickness, as a sickness, as in somebody who needs to be treated, and those that such somebody who has to be cured or healed. The other extreme of it is that they are viewed as children. It's believed that uh, we never grow up, that we always remain as children, and that is also a wrong view because just like adults, we are also adults, and we have our same thinking or the same feelings. And in some places, they go the extra step and say a divine. You must have heard of the word divyang. That's the word that is used right now for the differently abled in India. That means divine. So we are not divine people. We are just normal, just like you and me. We are all normal people, and we have the same aims, ambitions, and dreams and hopes. And this notion that they have special status or special protection from God is not true. And also, there's another thing that people think that people with disabilities are asexual. That is also not true. And we need to focus on the person, not on his or her disabilities. Second point is differences make everyone unique. What is most important to remember is that we all are different and need to be recognized for that which we are capable of doing, not for what we may require aid to accomplish. There's a lot, that's a huge capacity for the differently abled. There's a lot of talent that is not tapped. And I firmly believe that even mm, we have a lot to provide for the world. So much of talent and so much of potential that is untapped, just a spark, if there's just that small encouragement, I think you'll see a different, an altogether different way in which we can perform. And also, and disability itself is a widely diverse set of experiences. And the differently abled people's views on disability issues fall into several very different patterns. It's not about all the society themselves thinking differently, but even those who are having issues, they themselves have different ways of thinking about themselves and others. The most obvious difference is between different types of disabilities. We can think of them in broad terms like physical, cognitive, sensory, mental health, and learning disabilities. Or we can focus on specific diagnosis like spinal cord injury or CP or whatever it is. Each category and specific type of disability also comes with different stereotypes and intensities of discrimination. We already saw that in the previous slide. Another important
Sandeep,
difference, yes,
uh, can I request you to speak a little louder?
yeah, sure, yeah,
Closer to your mouth should be good. Yeah, sure.
yeah, okay. Another important difference among disabled people is how long each has actually had their disabilities, how they become how they became disabled, and how their thinking about disability has evolved. Some of us are born with our disabilities or have had them from early childhood. Others acquire disabilities later in life from illness, accident, or aging. So for me, I was quite healthy till I was 8 years old. So when I got sick around 8 years, I got arthritis. So that was the time I slowly started losing a lot of my mobility in my joints. So it was a slow progress through that experience. So as the disease progressed, it was also my thinking also changed, and it and so there are different ways of looking at things. So people with different, you cannot brush them with the same stroke. It's different for different people. So in general, we must aim for improvement of the disabled individual through medical intervention and rehabilitation, while also emphasizing collective action and social responsibility to make society better and more accepting of disabled people, both individually and as a group. So there are two models that people usually approach to physically challenged people. There is a medical model and the social model. So in the medical model, they try to remedy disability through a medical cure or by trying to make the person appear less disabled or more normal. So as they say. Whereas in the social model, the remedy is a change in the interaction between the individual and society. So now the stress is more on the social model. We are trying to change how people perceive people with disabilities and how they can be included in the mainstream. So now let's go to what is disability, the question that was asked in the first slide. So the United Nations had a convention on the rights of persons with disabilities in 2006. So in that convention, their preamble explains it this way. That disability is an evolving concept, and that disability results from the interaction between persons with impairments and attitudinal and environmental barriers that hinders their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. So, like I said, the previous slide, the emphasis is on the social model, how the society is thinking, and how the surroundings or the environment can be more conducive for the differently abled. And Article 1 of the CRPD says persons with disabilities include those who have long term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairments, which in interaction with various barriers may hinder their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. In the US, in America, the Americans with Disability Act was put out in 1990, and they define it like this: an individual with a disability is a person who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. For example, walking, thinking, seeing, speaking, or hearing. So they have a very simple definition, very easy to understand, I think. And then let's come to our own India. So in India, we have basically taken everything from the UN's CRPD, their model, and we brought it out as the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act. It was passed in 2006. So after India signed and ratified the UN CRPD in 2007, process of enacting a new legislation in place of Persons with Disabilities Act 1995, that's the old one, that was replaced by the Rights of Persons with Disability Act 2016. So it was passed by both the houses and it's right now in effect all over the country. So the RPD, the one in our country, it states principles stated to be implemented for empowerment of persons with disabilities are respect for inherent dignity, individual autonomy, including the freedom to make one's own choices, and independence of persons. Some really good words there, like inherent dignity. The Act lays stress on non discrimination, full and effective participation and inclusion in society, respect for difference and acceptance of disabilities as part of human diversity and humanity. Equality of opportunity, accessibility, equality between men and women, respect for the evolving capacities of children with disabilities, and respect for the right of children with disabilities to preserve their identities. The principle reflects a paradigm shift in thinking about disability from a social welfare concern to a human rights issue. So there's a lot of words and a very high aim there, but on the ground we know that we have a lot of ground to cover. People with disabilities haven't been reached. A lot of things have to be done for them, for us rather. So these are the list of disabilities recognized by the RPDA. So in the previous one, there were only 7 conditions that was recognized. Right now, the list has been expanded from 7 to 21 conditions. So these are the ones: blindness, low vision, leprosy cured persons, hearing impairment, locomotor disability, cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, chronic neurological conditions, specific learning disabilities, multiple sclerosis, dwarfism, intellectual disability, mental illness, autism spectrum disorder, speech and language disability, thalassemia, hemophilia, sickle cell disease, multiple disabilities, including deaf, blindness, acid attack victims, and Parkinson's disease. So, right, let's go to prevalence of disabilities. So, according to the World Health Organization, more than 100 crore people in the world currently experience disability, of which approximately 20 crores experience considerable disability in functioning. India's National Statistic Office NSO survey reported overall percentage of persons with disability in the Indian population was 2.2%, that is 3 crores, during July 2018 to December 2018. 2.3% in the rural and 2% in the urban areas. Prevalence of disability was higher among males. It was 2.4%, while it was 1.9% among females. 3.7% of the disabilities people were living alone, while 62% had caregiver. About 21.8% had received aid or help from government, and another 1.8% had received help from organizations other than government. There's a lot of catching up to do in that area. So now let me give you some general tips or etiquette. What do you do when you meet somebody who is differently abled? So here in Justice and Hope, we believe that should not call somebody as disabled or lame or anything of those sorts. Let's not label them. They're just differently abled. So disability gives a negative connotation to that. So while you say differently abled, it's a positive term. So we say the abled, just that they are abled in a different way. So some of the general tips: help keep walking pathways clear for wheelchair. So we tend to live in a very cluttered space. So clearing the path, if you find somebody in a wheelchair, please do so. And do not talk a person's disability unless it is relevant. Avoid asking personal questions about someone's disability. Let them bring it up. As idiots, we have this habit of going straight, even if you are strangers, and asking them, "What happened to you?" And that's kind of rude. And unless you know somebody, don't bring it up. If you must ask, be understanding and show respect. Like if you're going for a work and in the interview, they need to know what kind of disability you have, then they can ask you. So, what to do for people who use aids to move around? Always ask a person using a wheelchair if he or she would like help before helping. Don't assume that we need help all the time. Your help may not be needed or wanted. Don't hang or lean on a person's wheelchair. That's a common sense thing. If your conversation lasts more than a few minutes, think about sitting down with them. Because people who are sitting on a wheelchair, you can't be just looking up at you all the time. So if the conversation lasts more than 5 minutes, pull up a chair and sit beside them and make conversation. People who have hearing impairment. Always make eye contact with the person you are talking to. A gentle tap on the shoulder will help you let them know that you are there. Face the person you are talking to and speak slowly and clearly. Do not yell at them. Don't startle the person, like come behind them, and so give them a gentle tap if it's necessary to get their attention. And if you're not able to communicate, take a pencil and paper and write it down. Speak to the person, not their interpreter. Look at the person and speak to them. What to do when you meet somebody with mental disabilities? Limited mental function leads to issues with talking and social skills. Repeat what you say or try a different way of saying it. Must be patient. It's the most important part. You need to be patient. Keep instructions simple. Don't use big words. What to do when you meet people who are visually impaired? Always let the person know that you are there. Use the person's name you are speaking to and speak directly to them. Don't push, pull, or grab a person who is blind. This can cause accidents and is often embarrassing. Don't startle them. Do offer your arm for assistance. A person who is blind would rather take your arm than have you take their arm. Then we come to people with speech impediment. Do not finish the sentence for them. Allow them time to say everything they want to say. Again, be patient. That is the important part. Do not make fun of them or copy their speech. Never act like you know what a person is saying. Ask the person to repeat or rephrase or offer them a pen and paper. So finally, before I complete, I'd like to leave you with this quote. It's a famous man. Don't know whether you know him. He's Stephen Hawking, the world-renowned theoretical physicist. So he had to use a wheelchair, and this is what he said. People with disabilities are vulnerable because of the many barriers we face, attitudinal, physical, and financial. Addressing these barriers is within our reach, and we have a moral duty to do so. But most important, addressing these barriers will unlock the potential of so many people with so much to contribute to the world. Governments everywhere can no longer overlook the hundreds of millions of people with disabilities who are denied access to health, rehabilitation, support, education, and employment, and never get the chance to shine. And I must mention that it's not just the government's responsibility, it's the responsibility of everyone in the civil society, in the NGOs. We need to change our attitude towards them. All they need is just that little bit of push, that little bit of encouragement, and train them, and sky is the limit for all of us who are here in the differently abled world. So yes, that is what I wanted to tell you. Over to you, Chrysolite. Thank you.
Shilpa?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Shilpa, and I'm actually in Hubli right now. I work in Hubli. Me and my husband, we work for an NGO, and the NGO is about 23 years old. We work for people with disabilities. And whatever I'm going to talk today is going to sound very familiar to people who are on the ground. So I wouldn't call myself a very academician kind of person. So it'll be a very ground talk, very practical of how we do stuff and what we do and what I've learned from that. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. So in case you have questions, we do have, hopefully at the end, we have some time to answer those questions. But if you think, no, at the end, I will forget. So if that's the case, then you just put your questions on the chat right now while I'm talking, so that hopefully we can address them at the end, okay? So I'm going to take you through two sessions today. One is about what the government is doing, like what are the schemes, how to avail, what exactly is available. And that's like a shorter session I would like to take. The other one is about community inclusiveness, which I think is much more important than the second session, of course. But also it is a very basic session. Based on this session, you can build up a lot. So forgive me if it sounds like a very simple and just basic session, but I think the basic needs to be the fundamentals. If they are very strong, we can build much more on that. Okay, so not wasting any more time, let's just plunge into our second session that talks more about what the government is doing exactly and what are the schemes for the people with disabilities around us. So I'm going to share my screen. I hope you can see the screen. Even if you're not able to see me, if I am not visible, don't worry about it. So what we're going to see is all the state governments as well as the national authorities both have plans and schemes for people with disabilities. And this is not something new. From the 1995 PWD Act also, people had rights that they had rights to so many things that the government had provided them. But I'm putting up these two links for you that you can maybe take a screenshot, or I will even be sending the PDF of this. So the first website is swavalambancard.government.in. This is the new scheme that the government has introduced, that every person with disability is supposed to have a unique identity card, like how we have Aadhaar card for people with disabilities. Other than the Aadhaar card, for identification of disability also, they have this something called a Swavalamban card. And so on the website of that, you will find not just the government schemes, but also the state government ones. Now, I said that I'm from Karnataka, and most of you are probably from Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. So definitely the state government has different schemes over there, and our schemes are probably different here. For example, I'll tell you, whenever we enter into villages, we work in like 43 villages right now. The first person that we would like to meet in a village is somebody called a village rehabilitation worker. Now, this person himself is a person with disability, and they are appointed by the state government here. And their duty is nothing but to advocate for people with disabilities, disseminate information about the schemes, and collect statistics and census. And so basically all these are done by one particular person per panchayat, and they are under the panchayat. This is a state government scheme. So it is a very convenient scheme in Karnataka for us to work for people with disabilities when we go into village. But it is not the same in Andhra Pradesh. This scheme is not there. A village rehabilitation worker appointed by the panchayat, this is not a state government scheme in Andhra Pradesh. So there will be definitely differences when you work from state to state. The second one that I put out, already RPWD Act is what is already mentioned. Sandeep has already taken us through that. So I won't be taking much time into that. But if you need to have a handbook, I think this version is very good. It's elaborate, it's pictures. And so you can download this version of Handbook of RPWD Act. I think it will be very useful for all of us to understand. But today, I'm going to take you very quickly through the RPWD Act and the schemes that are covered in it. What are the rights of people with disabilities through that, and also a little bit through the National Trust Act. Okay. So as you already know, 1995 was the last time that there was a PWD Act. After 1995, now they have changed it. 2016 PWD Act was revised. It's also called the Revised PWD Act, or also called the Rights for Persons with Disability Act. Okay. So what this act does is that now 7 to 21, there were previously 7 disabilities that were quoted in that act in 1995. Now it is 21. What difference does it make to us as NGOs? See, now the scope of our work is increased so much. Previously, 2.1% of the population was, according to 2011 census, 2% of population was persons with disability, with only 7 varieties of disabilities. Now, if you can imagine 21 varieties included in that, please note that 2011 census, when they recorded, all these were not there. So now if you take a census, the scope of our work, the scope of people with disabilities and their needs, everything has now multiplied. We need to think from perspective of all these kinds of disabilities. So our scope has definitely increased because of the increase in the number of people with disabilities that are included in this act. Okay, that's the difference it makes to us. And so for us to understand not just 7 disabilities, we need to now make effort to understand all the 21 types of disabilities. That gives us a lot of scope to learn more as well, I think. Yeah. So the persons with disabilities reservations were previously only 3%. So any organization or any institute that had to appoint people, 3% was supposed to be reserved for people with disabilities. Now that is increased to 4%. This again is based also on the state government. In the state government of Karnataka, for example, they've increased it to 5%. Did you also know that every panchayat, okay, in the village, whatever the amount of funds they receive for the development of that community, 5% of that, or in your state, it may be 4%, but there is a specific minimum 4% that must be spent only for developmental activities for people with disabilities. So what does that tell us? It tells us that in a village, if a child is having needs for like maybe an orthosis or a wheelchair or any kind of rehabilitation work that needs to be done for a child in the village, please note that that panchayat has reserved money for it. But not all of us know about it. Not many people with disabilities will know about it. So many of us don't have access to it, and we end up not using that money. That is why when you read the report that even Sandeep read, was only 2.8% or 1.8% received all the services, is because sometimes it's our mistake because we don't know where to tap in funds and we don't know where funds are there. Many a times, maybe Telangana and Andhra Pradesh are very good states, but in Karnataka, many times the funds are returned because they are not able to use it for people with disabilities. So our one initiative is to make sure that we make the 5% funds that come to every village are utilized for people with disabilities and their needs. Free education, according to RPWD Act. Every child with disability from the age to 6 to 18, meaning first standard to almost PUC second year or 12th grade, they must be given free education. This is RPWD Act says it is their right. Okay, and it's important for us to note this. And also, any violation of rights for PWDs. Now, as we are reading about or learning more about the rights, if there is a violation, the special courts are supposed to be taking up these kind of cases in state. So these courts, the special courts, are actually it's a directive to have the state government hold special courts. Now, I was reading a report on how much this RPWD Act is implemented throughout India. It's shocking that these special courts, in spite of the act coming in 2016, such special courts are only set up in 8 states so far. And many states have not yet even taken up the step of setting up such special courts. But this is a right of person with disability, which we could advocate for them. And according to the act, any person who intentionally insults or intimidates with intent to humiliate a person with disability is a punishable act with imprisonment. This is a new right that persons with disability have. Like we were talking about the etiquette, meaning how you address people with disabilities. We should also remember that's why we call it the person first approach, meaning if Shilpa is a person with disability, you don't say Shilpa the disabled, you don't say Shilpa the lame girl, you don't say Shilpa the crippled girl, but you will address me as a person first. Person with disability, person with visual impairment, person with mental challenges, person with cognitive disability. So basically you want to see the person before you see the disability. The disability is the second part of the person. The first important part is person. If you fail to accept and also address a person as a person first, instead of addressing them as a person, if you address them as a disabled person, then and also you are actually humiliating a person because they are a person with disability. So we need to be very sure of how we, and sometimes it's as I'm telling you this, it doesn't happen overnight. Like I'm telling you now, so you'll change your terminologies immediately. It's not possible. It takes some time for us to adjust, but you must make an intentional effort. You must keep it in your mind whenever you're addressing a person with disability, even in their absence, that you will focus on the person first, and only then you will talk about their disability. Okay. We've already seen that from 7 we grew to 21 kind of disabilities. And another main feature that I would really like all of us to note is that the state governments have to construct a district level committee to address the local issues of PWDs. This means that the state government is supposed to have like a committee, and in this committee, who all are supposed to be there? NGOs like us who are working in that particular area, apart from people with disabilities and other stakeholders. Please note that an NGO should be a part of this district level committee, which ensures that all these acts are being given to people with disabilities in their jurisdiction. So we play a very crucial role in how these acts are reaching people with disabilities at the community level, at the rural level, at the panchayat level, and whatever level you're working at. So make sure that there is a NGO that is representing. NGO means people like you and me. So what then the RPWD Act has many other things, but in the beginning itself, I gave you 2 references, but you can go through other references as well, or you can even read the whole RPWD Act. That is interesting as well to understand more. Why I'm concising this is a self-explanatory booklet, or it's a self-explanatory document that you can read through and get more information. There is also Act for National Trust Act. This act plays a very crucial role because this act talks not just about person with disability like the RPWD Act does. That is mainly for person with disabilities. But this trust is also for NGOs that work for people with disabilities. We'll see why. The National Trust Act answers these questions. The parents will usually ask, especially if the child has a cognitive disability, challenges with comprehension, or usually we call them mentally retarded, which is not a right term. But if there are children like that, parents ask this question: what will happen to this child after me? The National Trust Act actually answers this question. They have a right to appoint a legal guardian. This guardian is supposed to be taking care of this child with disability, and they have all the rights, and they have a lot of privileges that are applicable through the National Trust Act. So why was this National Act set up? Is because to support and strengthen NGOs like us, other service providers, independent living with dignity for people with disabilities, and also to appoint legal guardians that I mentioned. So who can apply? Parent of person with disability or a relative, any registered organization, and for whom? National Trust Act is not for all persons with disabilities. It's for autism, cerebral palsy, mental retardation, and multiple disabilities. So you have this facility or this scheme applicable even for NGOs if you have a child that is suffering with these 4 kind of disabilities. If you're an organization that is set up specifically for them, like you have an autistic, you have a vision to work only among children with autism or cerebral palsy or just mental retardation or multiple disabilities, then you are you can avail this scheme through the National Trust Act to be a legal guardian and also take all the facilities provided for that child through you. Even a registered organization can be a legal guardian. Okay, so what is the purpose of this guardianship? Is the guardianship of the person and also the property of the person with disability, as well as the guardianship of the person with disability himself or herself can be taken up through the National Trust Act. So these are what you call like the major heads. Okay, there are many tiny heads of educational institutes that are there for people with disabilities. The government pension that they should avail every month. There are many such small heads, but I have covered up for the lack of time or for want of time, I have covered up the major ones that we should all know. And I hope that you will take time like a homework for all of us to go back and just read more about what all are there in these schemes. Okay. So one thing that I have learned is through the experience that I have with people with disabilities in the village is that the schemes and the reason why these schemes are established is for people with disabilities to be uplifted in their communities. But the major sources or the major what you call, how do you tap into these resources is definitely available at the panchayat level. And not just people with disabilities in the cities, but you also know that 75% of people with disabilities reside in the rural community, according to the 2011 census, as well as our experience that we see. So 75% of people with disabilities, when they are in rural communities, our work becomes majorly working through the panchayat, who has a major role to play in all these, whether it's RPWD Act or it is National Trust Act. They have a major role to play for us when we want to avail these services on behalf of people with disabilities, or if we want them to approach for themselves, they have a major role to play. So we will talk more on this. If you have questions or if you want to read it for yourself, that will be great as well. I'm going to quickly go into this second session and then we will have questions about this as well. Is that okay? Chrysolite, is that okay? Okay, that's great. So let's quickly go into our next session. If I am talking very fast, please let me know. That is one challenge I have. I talk very fast and people have told me in the past, but I try to do slow. But if I am fast, you just, show a thumbs up or raise your hand or something. I'll know, okay, I need to slow down. Okay. I like to do this graph before we do any session. This is like my favorite graph. I wish they actually put this graph under my name saying it's Shilpa's graph. But this is called the facts and values. When we want to work with people with disabilities, or any group for that matter, whichever group you're interested to work in, this is a very important learning graph for us. There are people who work with a lot of facts. Facts means I say like, okay, the RPWD Act, how disability comes, what you can do to prevent. There are a lot of facts associated with this. Also, there are values. Some of us come with a lot of empathy. Some of us come with compassion. Some of us are, so moved seeing the plight of people with disabilities that you want to do something for them. So there are a lot of values and facts that people bring in when they want to work for such people. Now, based on facts and values, there are 4 kinds of people that I always see, and you would also agree that you see, okay? So the first kind of people, I'll tell you why I'm talking about these kinds of people, okay? So I hope that all of you will find yourself somewhere in this graph. The first kind of people are ignorant. Now, ignorant is a very wrong term to be used for some people, I understand. But these are kind of people who have high values and very low facts. What do I mean by saying that? They have a lot of compassion. They are moved by they want to do something. They have passion, and they are very moved people. They just want to be there for some people with disabilities, which is right. But having no facts. For example, if you want to work for a person with HIV/AIDS, but if you don't know how you can contract it, then you have a lot of values, but you don't have facts, which makes us very ignorant. So this is one kind of category of people. I would say very dangerous kind of people and the second one is insensitive. These now are people, hopefully not us, who know a lot of facts, but have zero values. And if we are there, then it's something that we need to ask ourselves. If we have a lot of facts, a lot of knowledge about this, but if you don't have values. The third one is very dangerous, extremely dangerous, is because they don't have facts, they don't have values, they don't care about it. As simple as that. People with disabilities exist, I don't care about it. So what I should do about it? This is this kind of group of people, which I hope none of us are, okay? But the reason why we are doing this whole training, I think all the 3 sessions, is to see all of us here in the identification sector, where we have people having values as well as people who have facts, so that we will be able to fill both the gaps. And we see that we are all people who are in the identification sector, because any change in the community, if we are not changed people, there will be no change in the community, which is very simple. So I would request all of you to be really looking at the sessions with both the points of view, whether it's increasing your facts and also values. Okay, so let's go forward. I'm going to talk about what is inclusion, a very in term. All of us are talking a lot about it. Everybody is talking what inclusion is. So very, very simply to put it, no, people with disabilities are in, if they're integrated in all aspects of public life. This is my core sentence. If you are able to integrate all people with disabilities into all aspects of public life, then you have achieved something called as inclusion. We'll learn more about that. Okay? Because don't forget that people with disabilities are not a liability for us that we should include them. Please note that they are major contributors as well, as employees, as employers, as customers, students, contributors, leaders, and various aspects of life. Various people have already proved it. There are n number of examples of people with disabilities who have done great things that maybe many of us wouldn't achieve. But so it's not about we doing something to, bring them up, but it is about us knowing that they're equal and making sure that they're given equal opportunity so that they are integrated in all aspects of public life. That's the core. So we know when we talk about the people with disability, sometimes we only look at the disability or like a medical problem, or we only look at the person's, oh, emotionally they may be so down, or we only look at, array, they cannot be employed, how will they get any job, or we look at, array, this person cannot be married, so what to do. So not looking at a person with disability in one angle, but to look at them in a holistic way so that we'll understand their environment, their social aspect, education, vocation, emotional, all the aspects as a whole. People with disabilities are not fragmented. They are not only disabled, meaning there is not only wheelchair that is visible. There's not only, family life visible. It's a whole, just like you and me. We have all aspects of life. So when we are talking about the holistic approach or inclusion, please note that we are talking about all aspects, okay? Otherwise, we are missing out something great, which will also be very clear to you in the next few slides. What do you feel when you look at this? Anybody wants to say anything, please go ahead and say anything or put it in the chat. What do you just feel looking at this? It's very boring when only I have to do the talking, okay? Just look at the picture. You might have seen it different times, but is there anything that you want to comment? What do you think the picture is talking about?
She feels sad.
Yeah, that's
not able to climb.
Yeah.
Because he needs some ramp or something.
Great.
So he is not able to climb with wheelchair.
Correct. That is very true. So absolutely for that. So it's very evident. You can see that person's face is sad. Do you notice what is said here on the board? It says, weigh in, everyone welcome. And this is a person with disabilities on a wheelchair. Is it really possible to come on this flight of stairs? Is he really welcome? No, this is a question we need to answer. So to answer a question like this, many people attempted many things. Sandeep already addressed a few of those, which I'm going to quickly show you. Initially, what they thought was that there was a model called charity model. So poor. Ayo, papam. We have to do something for them. They have to be looked after. Ayo, such a pity. Or such a tragic thing. Ayo, I hope it doesn't happen to anyone. You feel so much compassion for that person. So all the social work aspects or initiatives were based on the charity model. Let's do something for them. Let's give them something. Let's make them beneficiary. But by doing that, what we are saying is that problem is the person with disability. That individual who has a disability is the problem. We are basically saying that. Then we move to a medical model. This is as a physiotherapist, I also used to think like this. When you look at a person with disability, all that you can think is, oh, he needs something. There is a fix it. I need to fix something. I need to fix his leg. I need to fix his hand. I need to fix a wheelchair. I need to do something to fix the wheelchair, or I need to do something to fix the person with disability. So what we thought was a person with disability is a problem. We need to do something to solve it. No, whenever you see that person, you'll say, "Arey, he needs sick. He needs help. His attitude is not good. He needs help, or he can't walk. He needs some help, or maybe he needs a surgery. He's confined to a wheelchair. What can we do? He cannot walk, he cannot talk, he cannot hear." So the whole focus was about the problem is with the person with disability. Basically, we are emphasizing the fact that it's the problem with disability. Then we understood the model of the social model, which now is what we are going to emphasize more or use more. In this, and we understood that what exactly is disability? Impairment plus barrier is equal to disability. We understood this. Meaning, impairment means a person having a loss. We just call it in Hindi hani. Any loss of function or loss of activity or loss of maybe a body part. For example, if I don't have eyes, if I'm born without eyes, that is my impairment. But because of that impairment, if I'm not able to understand what teacher is saying in the school, that is the barrier given to me because of which I am a disabled person. Is that clear? This concept needs to be very clear in all of us before we even do anything for people with disabilities. The impairment is the problem of person with disability. I agree. But the barrier is not the person's problem. It's the society's problem. It's the world's problem. It's all of us that are giving them the barriers, because of which that person with impairment is today a person with disability. When we understood this disability equation, that's when the social model came up. Here, last two models, whether it was charity or medical model, the problem was a person with disability, which we try to solve that problem by fixing him or her. Today, we understand the problem is the disabling world. The problem is the disabled society. It's not the person with disability. Keeping that in mind when we start our initiatives of whatever we are going to do, I think that will make a change in the whole community and not just the life of people with disability. So the social model explored our vision. It changed our strategy to not function, to make that person function, but it is to make the society function. Okay. So now when we talk about impairment plus barrier is equal to disability, the impairment is mostly what we need to do about prevention of disability, bringing awareness, making sure there are less number of people with disabilities that are born, or road traffic accidents that are occurring, basically trying to prevent any kind of disability that can occur. That is a whole different thing. But if there are already people with disabilities, if you are able to focus this middle circle called the barriers, if that is taken off, then there are many people who will not be left with disabilities. I hope I'm making it clear. So what are these barriers that we are talking about? The barriers could be physical, communication barriers, attitude barriers, institutional, there are many more. Now, for example, just look around you wherever you are sitting, okay? Is that place really accessible to people with disabilities? Do you have stairs of flight? Do you have stairs? Do you have, railings? Do you have ramp? Do you have, what are the physical challenges people will be experiencing wherever you're sitting right now? Or even if it is about your office, maybe all of us, if we are part of an NGO and the NGO has an office or a center, is that place really accessible to people with disabilities? I'm talking about physical accessibility. Just think about it for a minute and make a mental note of what you can do about that. Okay. The next is communication. This happens many times. We see a person having a challenge with speaking. We try to speak louder. That's our natural response. We think if by speaking louder, that person, even if a person has a hearing impairment, can hear you. Sometimes it's not true. So being very careful about how you communicate, whether it is, if you're talking to a person in wheelchair, also sitting at their eye level, like Sandeep was mentioning, sit down and talk to them so that there is eye-to-eye contact, and understand what kind of disability before trying to help. You can't drag a person with disability. how you communicate with them. Is it with very lot of sympathy, ayo papam kind of attitude, or is it with an attitude that yes, you are my friend? That this kind of communication makes a lot of difference, because your attitude is also reflected in your communication. What is your attitude? It's a good question to ask ourselves before we talk about it to the community. What is the community's attitude? When we go for survey, many times this has happened, okay, we go for a survey, we have a list, so we'll ask, where is this Ningappa? And a few of them won't know his name. Finally we'll come across one person who will say, oh, that fellow who doesn't have one leg, that Langda fellow, his house is there. So our attitude towards this person with disability is so bad. We think they can't do anything, that fellow with the one who doesn't have a leg. This is a kind of attitude many communities will have. So all these are barriers for them to live a life with full potential in all the spheres of life. These are all the barriers that we encounter. One more important thing when we talk about barriers is, when we try to do something for people with disabilities, we can't stick to only one kind of barrier. I'll show you an example. This boy, we know that intentionally I have made this photo a little blurred. I didn't want his face to be seen, okay? So forgive me if you think that picture is a little blurred. This boy never went to school after 5th grade. Okay, he has a spine deformity which doesn't allow him to walk. Somebody has to carry him. Initially, parents used to carry, then he lost his father. The neighbors used to carry him to the school. Then friends also tried to help. But as he grew up, now like he's, if he's 14 or 15 years, nobody can carry him, right? So if we want this boy specifically to go to school, what do you think is his need? What comes up immediately to your mind? What does he need to go to a school? What do you think?
Maybe a wheelchair?
Yeah, that's exactly what comes up to our mind, right? All of us will think, okay, let's give him a wheelchair. His hand seems to be okay. It's just his leg, so he can propel himself. But look at the place in front of his house. Do you see that step there? Do you see a stone there? So having to address a need only from the aspect of physical barrier also may not help. Now, for this instance, it's first we had to give him a wheelchair, help him to learn how to use that. Then we had to build a ramp beside his house that connects that house to the main road. And then that is not the end of it. Is the school accessible? Is the school willing to take a child with disability? Is the school willing to build a ramp so that this child with disability can come into the school? So all these aspects come into a picture when we want to deal with the issue. So what I'm trying to say is, we cannot stick to one aspect only. Overcoming obstacles requires an integrated approach. So by integrated approach, look at this. Look at this picture. Here is a child, lack of rehabilitation and equipment is there. These are major barriers, okay? There are many more, but these are major ones. There is a physical barriers as well, because there are steps. Then there is a lady who's saying no entry because she has an attitudinal barrier towards people with disability. She thinks that they cannot be very functional, or they cannot be very useful, whether it's a job, whether it's schools, or it's full participation in society, or even their gram panchayat, or anything that happens in the society. Maybe there are people who think that these people are not required. So what is the attitudinal barrier? If we try to overcome those part by part, see, we've given him, but we've not built a ramp in the first instance. Not helpful, right? Look at the second one. We built we put a ramp somehow, but if we didn't give him a wheelchair, again not helpful. Right? Sorry? Okay, I can hear somebody talk. I'm sorry. Can you please mute yourself? Okay. So the third picture also, if you see, here the person has now changed her attitude. She's saying welcome, but there is no wheelchair and there is no accessibility. Can he really be able to go on top? So what I'm trying to say is, when you want to address these barriers, you have to make sure that it is an integrated approach. We cannot look at only wheelchair and say we have made accessibility, or we cannot look at only ramp and say we've given him full accessibility, or we cannot work only on attitudes and forget about the other things. So when you talk about overcoming obstacles for people with disabilities, It has to be an integrated solution where now you see that this person has a rehabilitation equipment, accessibility, attitude change. So he's able to go to school or maybe get a job or maybe able to perform better. So when we are trying to solve problems in the community as an NGO or as a social work wing, we need to make sure that we are looking at all the aspects of obstacles for people with disabilities so that they will be able to have a better approach. I hope that point is very clear. Okay, so this slide, I think we all need to question ourselves and also what we are doing so far as an NGO. When we talk about inclusion, there are 4 models that come to our mind, okay? The first is exclusion, which nobody should do. Exclusion means if you see the 2 yellow circles that are out of the black circle, those 2 yellow circles are actually persons with disabilities, okay? So these person with disabilities in exclusion model, what you see here is they are out of the whole sphere. So this model is where we don't include them at all in any of our activities. Okay, then it becomes exclusion, which none of us should be doing. The second is something that we do very often. What we do, we are one group, or say community is one group, or the NGO is one group, and those people with disabilities, they are there. No, they are all together another group. We many times tend to do this where we seclude ourselves, we segregate into 2 groups, we normal group and disabled group, normal people and people who have challenges. We try to segregate, make them 2 departments, 2 divisions when we are trying to do some work. We go to give some awareness. We try to do what we try to do. We separate these people and give different kind. If it's pertaining to the disability which they need to know, that's a different thing. But if you're talking about, say, cleanliness or any such common topic, but if you want to segregate 2 groups there, then that is also not inclusion. It becomes a segregation. Then there is even more dangerous group. Look at this group. These people are now included in the community, but still there is a round inside, meaning it's like a classroom of students where all the children are seated, but only people with disabilities have a different seat. They have a special, they are separated even being inside the group. This is called the integration model. It's still not the inclusive model. Please note that the inclusive model is this. You don't know who is a person with disability when you're seated in a group, unless it is a visible disability. Otherwise, when you look at a group, you don't even know if there is a groups within the group. If there is a group of people with disabilities that is within the group, that's not inclusion. Ideally, inclusion would mean you don't even know who is a person with disability in that group is. To that level, if you are able to see them as equal to you, as equal contributors in all areas of life, that is ideally inclusion, whether it is in our organizations, whether it is in the community that we are working, whether it is in the planning of activities that we do for our organization. If we are able to see them as equals, then this is how the project should look. You should not even be able to make out which is a person with disability. We spoke about barriers. Okay, we spoke about all the different kinds of barriers are there and how to check within ourselves what we can do about it and how this prevents them to full participation. And also we looked at about, if it is not the barriers, then persons with disabilities can be just like us. Because of barriers, they have been disadvantaged. And barriers is our responsibility. We looked at that as well. Now, these are some practical examples. This is what I have learned through many years that I want to share with you. These are some practical examples of how we can include people with disabilities. I know I have last 5 minutes left, so I'll try to cover that up. So in this, what we do is what we call as need-based approach. When we plan an activity for people with disabilities in the village, first we try to find out what is the need, and there are various ways to do it. Maybe many of you are familiar with participatory rural appraisals, need-based, focus groups, or so many other ways that you can do. But keeping the focus on what they need more than what we can give. When the shift happens, when the shift between what we can give to what they need, if this shift happens, then what you're doing for them will be more useful for them. So we usually gather the mothers of children with disabilities, or even youngsters with disabilities, or we gather people with disabilities directly and find out need based, what do they need in the community. We do more participatory appraisal. This is something called as the 10 seed technique that we are doing. So through these, we find out what is the need. What is the danger of not doing this? We many of us know that many communicable diseases can be prevented when we prevent open defecation. This is all of us know. So what an NGO comes and does in a particular village, we don't want the increase of communicable disease, or even to that extent, even polio can be prevented when there is limited open defecation. So let's build toilets. So this is a true story. Okay. So there was an NGO, they came and built up toilets for all the people in the community. Very good. Okay. Is it a good initiative or no? I mean, all of you would agree, right? There's so much money spent on making sure the toilets are built. What happened after 4 or 5 years? This NGO came back to see whether these communicable diseases are reduced now in that village. What they found? Zero change. You know why? All these toilets, these people started using as storerooms, because no water in the village. Who will bring water from the well to pour into the bathroom? Okay, so they had certain practical challenges, because of which they never used the toilets. They made them storehouses, or they just kept them like that. So the point here was, because it's not the need that these people felt, they never appreciated the effort that was put in by the NGOs. This is the lesson that we all have to learn. Unless it's a need-based approach, then it will may not have complete success. It may not be useful for people with disability. So taking them with us matters a lot. Okay. Second thing is, sometimes we look only at person with disability. We give that person education, training, build a lot of, we invest a lot into that person's with disabilities development, but we forget their whole family. When this person with disability has to go back into the village, into the family, it is very important for that family as well to be developed. I'm not saying focus all your activities on the whole family, but keeping in mind that if you want inclusion to happen, it has to be the whole family appreciating what is happening to that person, the whole family, coming alongside with that person with disability as they are developing. So if we forget that community, if we forget family and we focus only on individual, it won't be inclusion. It is extraction of that person from that community. So make sure that we are mindful of the community, we are mindful of their whole family. That's one lesson that we all have to learn. Okay. At the end, I just want to tell you a story. Okay. And this story, I would like all of you to tell me, give your opinion about it as well. This is a story of a village that was on the mountain. Okay, by village, I mean not these concrete buildings. Okay, this is the best picture I could get, so I just put that up. So basically, it's a village, a small village that is on top of a mountain. Now, this village had one big problem. The problem was, every time they were, going on these roads, they slipped, they fell down into the valley, and they broke their legs and hands, and so many accidents, and sometimes even death. So an NGO like us came, like you and I, okay? Like you and I, we, as an NGO, we saw this problem. It's a bad thing that people are going through. So let's do something, okay? We thought we had plans, we had so many annual plans we did, we consulted so many people, we made so many plans, and we came out with a very good project. The project is Project Ambulance. What we did, at the end of this valley, just below the valley, we put one ambulance and we tried to solve the problem. Every time a person fell, immediately the ambulance will take them to the hospital, thereby reducing the complications. No more broken legs, no more deaths, because the ambulance was very effective in reaching these people to the nearest hospital and making sure there are no medical emergencies. So is this a good plan? What do you guys think? Isn't it a good plan?
Partially.
Partially. Okay. So
Yeah.
then what happened after some time, this ambulance driver, no, he gave up. He said, who will go for such a job sitting in the valley every day? Who will sit there all day waiting for somebody to fall? And slowly the staff in this ambulance, the nurse in the ambulance came down. And how will this function? Who will give money for this ambulance for a long time? Somehow we raised money through an NGO for 1 year, 2 years. After that, it was becoming very difficult for us also to raise money for this ambulance. So what happened? The driver left, the nurse left, then the ambulance was simply sitting there. Again, the problem started. People started falling down, and again, the same thing happened. Now the villagers came and they became angry with us. You people, we were fine before only. Why you brought ambulance? And now see how we are suffering again. Okay. So then again, people like us, we sat and we thought and we had more trainings like this. And then what we did, we put a clinic only at the valley. Much better, no? Who will take and go? Simply put a clinic at the valley. People will fall immediately. Treatment is given, no problem at all. Right? Same problem happened after 1 or 2 years. Who will run the medical clinic? It's so hard, right? I mean, paying the doctor, paying the nurse, making sure the medicines are there. And even if the villages are able to contribute something, but it's still not enough to sustain the clinic. And so many issues that came up with this clinic. Okay. So in the story, what happened? Again, the medical clinic also closed down. Again, the people were very furious. They said, before only we were better. You simply brought this medical clinic. We started depending on you. Now you closed it down. What kind of NGO you were? You know, they started blaming people like us. Then what happened? No, one fine day, the whole group of villagers, the seniors, you know, the leaders gathered, and one old man said, I told you before also not to depend on the outsiders. Come, what we'll do around this village, around in the valley, there are so many trees. Let's cut down the trees. What we will do, few trees we will cut. Each house take the responsibility of their road, meaning wherever your house is, build barriers there only. So what they did along the road, no, they built a barrier like this. Each house took responsibility of little by little. They cut the trees, they placed it there. Whenever it would break or something, that house would take responsibility to build it up. So they built a barrier like this. You know what happened after that? Nobody fell from the mountaintop. So when nobody fell from the mountaintop, there was no need for NGOs like us to build a clinic or to bring an ambulance. What I want to tell you through the whole story is the best people who can tell you solutions to their problems are people with disabilities. And to make an inclusive community or an inclusive project or an inclusive NGO, the best solutions is to take them along with our journey from the beginning. Take them along, take their, if it is their problem, have a person with disability represent instead of us trying to solve their problems. It's the best to consult them to understand their problems as well as to devise what can be done best for people with disabilities, so that your whole project, your whole NGO, your whole, even the community is completely inclusive. That's being inclusive according to me. Okay. So I hope I have given you enough ideas of practically what we can do. And I've shared with you what we have seen through our organization and learned through so many years. I hope that's helpful. Thank you. If you have any questions, me and Sandeep, I think we'll be able to answer.
Wow. I mean, the last anecdote is just so profound. And that's absolutely how all of us as NGOs, we rush to do things, we want to do things, but that's not the need or that's not the solution. Thank you so much for highlighting that. I think this has to be told widely to all the NGO partners across, just not AP and Telangana, but across India, that whatever we do, we got to make it as an inclusive plan involving more the community. Thank you so much, Shilpa. Thank you, Sandeep. So if any of you have questions, please either unmute yourself or put them in the chat box, and we should be able to have them addressed. So I would like to start off with a couple of questions. My first question is, so when you see somebody, I know I know it myself, but then it comes so naturally, the sympathetic or pitiful attitude. How do you overcome that?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
also the feel that, okay, what will they think if I don't, if I don't behave in certain way, if I don't show sympathy, will they be offended? So how do we actually balance it, and how do we actually overcome?
Yeah. It's like I said, it's not overnight. Just because we did an awareness today, you will change. It wouldn't. But being mindful that you appreciate that person as a person, being mindful that they are equal contributors and not somebody who are receivers of help, but maybe more important contributors even than us. Sometimes when you look at a person, you look at somebody who's needy, somebody who's wheelchair, I need to push, somebody who needs help in communicating. When you look at it from that angle, you try to do something to help. But when you look at that person as an equal contributor, then even if you want to help you, it's more of a help that comes with courtesy and not with compassion. So if you want somebody to cross the road now, you would ask them saying, do you need help? Do you want me to do this? Can I help you? Instead of, "Are you need help, let me push you." So that mindset has to be intentional. I understand it's not automatic because we don't deal with people with disabilities on a daily basis. Sometimes we don't see them every day. But being mindful, I think, will help a lot. Sandeep, would you like to add?
Yeah, if it's somebody you meet often on your way, I think the good thing would be to get to know them, speak to them, and once you start speaking to them, you will learn more about. They have more to them just their disability. So they
Mm.
are people. They have intelligence. They have a sense of humor, just like any other person. And once you get a sense of that, your attitude will automatically change. So I have few friends, and none of my friends treat me differently because they know I am just like them. I joke around just like them. I talk around them. So get to know them a little bit, and that will change.
Sure. Sandeep, I would like to dwell, would like you to dwell a little more on some of the awkward, if that's all right with you, if you could help us understand where people like me were very proactive in showing you sympathy or offering you help, but that was not something that you required. If you could just give us more practical things that have happened.
Yeah, it's very common actually. So, especially in India, we are generally more helpful.
Mm.
So, when I went to the US one, I noticed that people they don't look at you or they don't offer help so readily. So, on
Mm.
one extreme, it's not good to be indifferent, but on the other hand, it's also we don't like people to be nosy. Like here in
Mm.
India, I find a lot of people coming and asking, "Oh, what happened?" Or they'll go and ask my mom, "What happened? Is he like this from his birth?" And they ask awkward questions. Over time, you develop a thick skin, but sometimes it is a bit insensitive or rude. So, yeah, just treat them like normal people. Just smile at them, or you know, uh, yeah. So it's not something like they're not very different. Yeah.
Mm.
Sure. Shilpa, could you give us the difference between empathy, sympathy, and apathy?
Yeah, more of an English question, right?
Yeah, but I thought
Yes,
as NGOs and as social workers, it's very
yes,
important that
yeah,
we know, especially the difference between sympathy and empathy. And
you're right.
the world doesn't need sympathetic people, is what I strongly believe. We need more
That's true.
empathetic people. Though, as NGOs, as social workers, we want to do something. We are empathetic, but that drive doesn't really kick up. More
Mm.
of sympathy kicks in than empathy. That's why I would like you to stress more on the difference. how empathy can be pushed up.
That's true. Apathy is indifference. I mean, you don't care about whatever. But sympathy and empathy are really, sympathy would be something that you want to do for a person, and empathy is when you step into that shoes of a person. That's how we usually differentiate. But for NGOs, for social workers, the definition would be sympathy is when you do something for them through your project, but empathy would be taking them along when you are deciding anything for them, whether it's a project, whether it's what you want to give, whether it is a simple scholarship or anything. From the perspective of an NGO, I would say empathy is to take them along your journey in whatever you want to do. But if you are being an outsider and deciding for them, they need this, let's do something for this, then it is more coming out of just, maybe not an emotional sympathy, but definitely an activity wise sympathetic approach, because you're trying to decide what they need. Empathetic would be taking them along and making them also equal decision makers in whatever you're doing. This is not an English approach, but that's definitely an NGO. We need to understand this kind of difference in our approach.
Yeah, so true. So Sandeep, help us understand, when we come across a differently able person, what should be our conversation, or how should we greet him, or how do we indulge in a conversation, or what are the things that we are not supposed to talk, and what are the things that are okay to be initiating with that person?
Yeah, so like I said in the slides, when you meet a person with disabilities, a differently able person, you just talk to them like you talk with anybody else. Just say hi and just start a conversation. Like we have a lot of hobbies. Like for me, I have my own hobbies. I have my own likes and dislikes. So, like in introduction, you read right that I like to chat with my friends on WhatsApp. I like watching sports. And I like watching movies. So you can just strike up a conversation, and don't bring the disability in your first meeting. Maybe in your second, once you know them a little bit, maybe the second or third time that you speak with them, you can bring it up, and that won't sound intrusive. So yeah, well, you get a bit of let them be more confident of you, and then you can ask. It's no problem there. But again, differs from people to people. So some people are very closed, some people are more open-minded. So yeah, once you start up, once you start striking a conversation, once you get to know them, you'll know them. How, what kind of, attitude or yeah, you know that.
Sure. Any other questions from the audience? Okay. Shilpa, could you share with us about Equip India? What are the different things that you do with Equip India, and how can we reach out whenever we have a need, or where are your locations?
Sure. We are only based in Hubli, Karnataka. It's like the northern part of Karnataka. And we don't have any branches. We believe in developing partners than developing branches. So, like Unnati we would say that we are associated with them. So, similarly, we would like to have associate partners rather than developing branches. That's why you will find us only in one place, that's in Hubli, Karnataka. So, what we do is we have both community-based approach as well as a center-based approach. In the center, we do more of medical rehabilitation and vocational training and computers and spoken English, anything that can equip people with disabilities to get into jobs. And we have a residential care, like a hostel where students can stay and commute to the city so that they will be able to go to colleges and schools in spite of the physical barriers that they have. Coming from villages sometimes is very difficult. So we have a residential care there. And we manufacture handicrafts through, and we train women with disabilities to do that. And we also sell and export those handicrafts. That is part of our institute-based rehabilitation. In the community, we have a 5-year project usually that we do. And these 5 years, now we are in the 4th year of that 5-year project, is we adopt 43 villages. And we do everything in the, help you remember, we usually use an acronym called HEAL. Okay, so HEAL is what we do. We do everything that relates to health of a person with disability, from prevention, training mothers who are pregnant to make sure they take care of their health so that there is no disability in the child, to after the child is born, 0 to 6 years, we try to see early, identify any child with disability and treat any undernourishment that is there with local resources in the village. So and also provide rehabilitation through wheelchairs, walkers, crutches, canes, surgeries. And so there's a lot of health programs that we do in the community. And then we do E. E is environment. This is something that we've learned, that environment of a person with disability also makes a lot of difference, whether it's accessibility issues, or even if it is general environment like planting trees and saplings, and the environment of a person with disability, especially children in school. So we do school awareness so that the environment of person with disability in the school is very good. Children learn how to make friends with people with disabilities. Once they learn that at school level, they are much more comfortable to deal with such issues when they come to a college level. So we do a lot of awareness and inter-school competitions and all, fun with the kids so that they learn how to deal with people with disabilities. This is about environment. Then we talk about A. A is academics. A lot of scholarships. Our primary focus, especially for the age group of 6 to 25 also, is to make sure that they have education, access to education. So we provide scholarships and a lot of training so that they get back to school and learn more and be more employable. There's a lot of access to education that we do. That is about our academics, HEA. The last is L, that talks about livelihood. We do a lot with income generation trainings, providing seed money so that they can have access to small projects like goat rearing, petty shops, or maybe even small businesses that they start. So we try to help them to develop a livelihood, teach them tailoring so that they can pick up that skill, and many other trainings that we associate with the government as well to do. So we do HEAL, and also counseling and moral support, because if without that, sometimes many things don't happen. I can quote one example. About 10 years ago, I met one person with disability. At that point, I was not so much of a social worker. I was only a physiotherapist, I think 10, 15 years ago. So when I met that person, I understood that, you know what, you can get a surgery done and you can walk. This is all that I said. We didn't even sponsor his surgery or nothing. After 4 or 5 years, he came back to me. He got the surgery done with the help of his relatives. He walked and came. The first time he came crawling. So sometimes it's just that piece of advice that changes the whole thing. So that we do a lot. A lot of relationship building is our core of work. We invest into the lives of people with disabilities through relationship building, counseling, moral support, sometimes guidance, not always, but helping them to get facilities from the government, advocacy services. So in short, this is all that we do. You can check our website, sft.in, equipindia.org. My husband is sitting beside me, so I'm asking him. It's called equipindia.org. I could type it as well, or I will be, the material that I used today will be available as a PDF. I will be sending it to Sandeep, and you can have access to that, and you'll have our contact information as well as on that with the website.
I have a follow-up question.
Sure.
As NGO workers, we can come across differently abled in our own communities, and we can also have parents asking us for help or for identification. So how do we actually play a role in identifying the strength or the potential of the I believe all differently able are gifted. So how do we actually identify that talent, and how can we play that catalyst role?
It's a very good question, actually. Usually when we do like a camp, what we do in Equip India is that we have a camp not just to assess medical needs, but we do a small questionnaire. We spend some time with the child and parents to understand the educational needs, and also what the child is good at and bad with. And it's usually not like a evaluation, it's more of a, understanding the child, and then helping the parents with it. So sometimes it takes professionals, and sometimes it takes trained workers in the community. So that, even that can be the best. But the best person usually is the mother. She will give some kind of feedback to us that will help us understand. For instance, she'll say he cannot read well, but he knows all the colors at a very early age. So it gives us cues as to what the child is interested, and it takes a little bit of training for the social worker to understand maybe what the strength or what this is leading to. So yes, there would be a little bit of training from, not like a, like a profound training, but basic skills to identify. The social workers at the community level need to be a little bit trained for that.
Sure.
That would be a follow-up.
Shilpa, excuse me.
Yes,
Hello, I have a question.
please go ahead.
Now we are in the COVID-19. How you are managing your, now we are in the COVID-19, no? How you are managing your institution or severe works or your institutional works with the children, with the people, all that you have done already. Now present situation, how you are doing? I just want to know.
We are also learning, Sister Rama. It's a learning phase for us, but three things we have changed. One is we stopped doing a lot of group trainings. We are now focusing on individuals or families is first thing. We've stopped bringing groups together. Second thing is now we've learned to use technology, and also helping people with disabilities in the village to use more of technology at this point. Now we have Zoom calls or trainings like how we are having right now, even if it's an SHG, like self-help group training, or taking them for an audit to bank, or telling them how to deal with issues in the SHGs, or many of the trainings, we've now translated that either into recorded sessions, which we pass on to them, or through Zoom calls or WhatsApp calls. WhatsApp is now allowing 8 people on one group, which is advantageous for us. So we do a lot. We have started using technology to bring continue the work in the villages. This is the second thing what we do. The third thing that we did is, for us to go forward, like I said, their need is important. And so we actually did a survey in the first month of lockdown itself. We did a survey through 800 phone calls to identify now what is the need. We had initially in January, we made so many plans. We'll do human rights, we'll do that, we'll do this, like 200 programs were planned. When COVID came, we just had to stop all that. We had to reframe what they want now. And so through a survey, we came to know that what we had planned initially maybe is not what is required for them now. So we changed our plans. We are focusing more on livelihood, because that's the most hit area in COVID times. They need jobs. They have lost jobs, especially daily labor. They used to come to city for jobs, and now they have lost that kind of job. So we are trying to focus more on their felt need is now livelihood. So we are investing more on livelihood, and livelihood projects are individual based projects. So again, they are not group based, which is convenient for us to work with them. Since last 2 months, we have started going back to villages with a lot of caution and having to deal only one-on-one or just family based and not any group. So yes, work is continuing, just the direction changes because of the need that is changed. And people with disabilities are actually more prone. Challenges, yeah, like I said.
And you and the children.
Children, people with disabilities?
Yes.
Yeah, yes. For them is especially our whole age group of 6 to 25 that we were investing time in education. Colleges stopped, schools stopped. Still there are questions whether they are going to go back or no. So one of the challenges they are facing for that age group is education, because it's all stopped. Schools have begun slowly, but not completely. Colleges have still not begun here. From 25 and above, challenges are mostly economical. Because of the lockdown, they didn't have work, and they are mostly from socio-economically backwards area. So there is a lot of impact on their livelihood that has happened. And nutrition also, actually here the government used to provide midday meal for schools, and also 0 to 6 years also they had a lot of programs to build up their nutrition level. And Karnataka, if you know, stands one of the highest where undernourished children are there. So a lot of programs were going on which had to stop. We stopped, government stopped, everybody stopped. So the children were coming up to a certain mark of, we were preventing undernourishment, which now came down absolutely. They're all under yellow and red zone of WHO scale. So that is one challenge even for us as well as for them. We have to again build that nutrition up. We have to build education level up, and also focus on livelihood. So their challenges are our challenges. So it's the same question actually. So yes, it's been very challenging, because if you notice that people with disabilities are more prone for comorbidities, like whether it's diabetes or hypertension, because of their stagnant lifestyle, sometimes they're more prone to such comorbidities, thereby making them even more prone for COVID-19. So bringing that awareness in them to help them
Do you
understand.
have any awareness?
Yes.
Special awareness is given to these special children. How you are providing them the special awareness regarding COVID?
Yes, special awareness to special people is there. We use a lot of social media to do that. And we are also training the local people who can train them better, because at the end of the day, once we are not there, that training should continue. So ASHA workers and Anganwadi teachers are our focus, so that they can spread this awareness to children and mothers around them. Of course, we have social media, we send out videos, we do Zoom calls and give awareness. But our core people are insiders in the village that we are training, so that they can spread the awareness at a faster rate, and that is more sustainable. So local people, like we have village rehabilitation workers, which I spoke about, ASHA workers, which are health workers, and Anganwadi teachers who take care of small children. So these three people we focused to train them first, so they can spread the training to the villages.
I have a small doubt, because these blind children, then the hearing impairment children, the visual impaired and the hearing impaired children, how we can provide them the awareness? Is there any way you are doing? Just we wanted to know, so that it is a great help for us.
That's true. Now, we are actually not so involved with people with visual impairments, because we don't have a lot of numbers in this 43 villages. But there's something that is called alt text that is coming up. So this alt text means any video content that needs to be spoken, or it needs to be put in a way that the visually impaired can be have access to. If you note today, I have used a lot of pictures in my presentation, but every picture I have read out aloud, even though I know that you can all speak. Like I said, medical model, I read all that was around in that, in spite of knowing that you know that you can read it. So this is called an approach where any training that you give, especially for visually impaired, you make sure that you are reading it everything out, not just using statistics or anything that that is visual has to be read aloud. And it's also now everywhere, if you have like a coronavirus awareness video, along with the video, you're actually expected to send the text of the whole thing, so that using gadgets, they can hear if it is only a video, meaning if the video is not audible, it's just a PPT with no sound, then you send a text along with it. It's called alt text, so that people with disabilities can use their devices to hear what is read in that. So it's difficult but not complex. We just try to use whatever ways we can to help them understand. We could use devices that are expensive and maybe they can't have access to it. So making changes, small changes in the way we do, I think actually helps them a lot.
Thank you, Shilpa. Thank you very
Sorry if
much.
I answered your question. Sorry.
Yeah. I got it some answers.
Okay.
It's good sharing. Thank you.
Shilpa, there's another question. What type of sources should social worker or volunteers have to reach? Kusuma, can you actually elaborate more on the question?
Sources. Okay. From where you can get information. Is that the question?
And, resources. One should, if they have the desire to work among these people, what type of resources and sources they should have, and so that they can encourage them, and they should have the basic tools, to equip them or to encourage them or to counsel them. Can you give any suggestions like that? On that?
For a social worker
Or a volunteer or a teacher?
Okay.
Anyone?
Yeah. If it's about how to work among such people, the best people who could tell you is already those who are working. So you can gain experience from their mistakes, because they've already learned from their mistakes. You can get better experience from them. But if it's about resources for like statistics or services or schemes, how to avail, where to apply, this is all now, I mean, we are open to the world of Google. I mean, there is definitely a lot of information available, but I would again say the best sources for us to work in rural communities is definitely Panchayat. They have all the information dissipated from the national level, from state level, it reaches them. They are main sources. Even if you want to go to a village and ask, how many people with disabilities are here, we wouldn't know at the outset, but the Panchayat will have statistics of how many people are there, what kind of disabled people are there. So they are like, if you're talking about rural communities, the best people to approach is definitely the Panchayat. They must and they should have all the information related to schemes, government, and also the numbers and where these people reside. Everything should be there. If you're talking about urban and semi-urban or school setup, the information regarding people with disabilities again is a little difficult to get. But how to work among such people, n number of resources for, I think the best way, like I said, is if you can have a contact with any NGO that's already working, you can pick up from there, because they will already assess the situation in your area, what's best for you, and they will be, you can be able to probably pick up. You can contact me if you think it's helpful, and I can do whatever required. Maybe, I'm not sure, Sandeep, I'm nominating your name as well.
Yeah, so maybe in our mail, I will send across your email ID and Sandeep's email ID. I
Definitely.
think Equip India has to be well known in India, so that all of us as organizations and individuals are equipped to equip the differently abled. So sure, I think most of us would need more information or insights into it. Yeah, I think if we do not have any other questions, I have shared the feedback link for all of you to give your feedback. We have our the follow-up session on helping people with spinal cord injuries. More to share on the model that works in AP and Telangana. So we will share the poster shortly, and please send across and invite people. And special thanks to Sandeep and Shilpa. I think I loved both of your presentations, very clear and very practical and very relatable also. So thank you so much for all that you're doing and for the blessing that you are for us during this training and also for the community at large. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for participating. See you again next Tuesday.
Thank you all. You're a very good audience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.